And first of all, Steve, welcome to the program. I've interviewed you on the radio. I've never interviewed you on the TV, so welcome.
Well, thank you for coming out and visiting me.
Absolutely. So the office is it's newly decorated. You asked me how I like the colors. You've repainted, you've redecorated. You've got a big new desk here. I like it. It looks good. Last time I was in here, you've kind of arranged stuff, rearranged stuff a little bit, and made it more you. It suits you.
The transition is in full swing.
It is. So where are we in the jail? You've got I actually went in the wrong part of the jail, by the way, where the prisoners were. I was waiting.
You're going home.
I was waiting. I was waiting in that lobby, and finally Craig from McTV said, "Where are you?" So apparently I was in the wrong part of the building. This is an interesting building.
Right. The building that you're in now is the 1969 building, the sole building that remains from when this was the Marshall County Care Facility. So this was the building that was renovated with the jail project in 1999, and then the jail opened in July of 2000. So this three-story building toward the east end was the existing building, and then a 1909 building had been raised, and then the jail was attached to this building and sits on the west here. So the actual jail lobby is in the west wing of this building, and then you enter into the new jail.
That's where I was. I took a wrong turn, so I'm glad to be in your office. You have been sheriff for not too terribly long. How long?
Well, we've got half a year
Already.
So January 3rd was when I was sworn in, and of course we're in July here.
Right.
And starting the new fiscal year here in July too. So that's a beginning of something interesting. Sheriff Camachis and I shared the past budget. He had half the year, and I had the other half of the year, and so now we're beginning anew in my administration with those spending priorities and my budget.
Sure. Let's talk a little bit about your past in law enforcement. How did you start out? Was this something, and I often ask these questions when I interview, like, what made you want to do this? I mean, growing up, was this something that you thought about doing?
Yeah, I was born into it. Actually, over there's a picture of my father above that workstation, and he started in the 1960s, and so I knew from a very young age what I wanted to do with my life, and continued on to that path, and was able to start in a small community here in Marshall County, and advance through, and then obviously came over to the sheriff's office and worked my way through the ranks here, including investigations and assignment to the drug task force, and having a sergeant title, and was third in command with chief of jailers, chief of the jail division, and then proceeded there from that to chief deputy, and then with the announcement of Sheriff Camachis retiring, running for office and being elected sheriff.
Yeah, it's an elected position, and it is a much revered position. I mean, when you think sheriff, there's obviously a great deal of pride that comes with that. Hearing your name associated with it, I know that's something that's really near and dear to you.
It is, and the direct accountability to our voting public means an awful lot to me, and my family, of course, they're incredibly proud of it too. I think they might be at times more excited about it than I am, and even now to this day, they periodically poke me and go, "Can you believe it?"
Can you believe? Well, it's interesting because when you were sworn in, the paper, I can't remember which, on the front cover of the Times-Republican, you had a member of your family that put your sheriff's.
They did actually. My father pinned the sheriff's star on me.
Right.
And then my children, my two daughters, pinned the sheriff bars on the collar, and my son switched out the nameplate.
Well, that's neat that your whole family was involved, no doubt about it. In your role as sheriff, you talked a little bit about the budgeting process. Was that something that you had to get used to, or you're still trying to get used to? Because when you're taking over a whole department and you're in charge, I mean, there's a lot of numbers out there, right?
There are, and in many ways they're fluid. You know, of course, there are some things that are pretty static and predictable, and many things that are not. And so as the fiscal year was rolling on, that was interesting to slide into home base and still come in where we'd projected that we would be. But that was probably the most challenging part of the transition, because as I joked before, in my other roles in administration, I would say I had a checkbook and he had a budget.
Right.
But now it's me when those claims are coming in, looking over those line items, you know, finding the appropriate place to
Sure.
take that money from,
Sure.
and project what we're going to need
Yeah.
through the rest of the year.
How many officers do you have, sheriff's deputies?
So we have 20 sworn staff, and then the agency as a whole is 60.
Okay. And you go to all corners of the county and help out with some. I realize a lot of the towns in our county don't have police officers, so I know it's a joint effort that, you know, you guys help patrol those.
Right. 9 of the 12 communities contract with services with the sheriff's office, and State Center has their own police department. Obviously, Marshalltown does, and then Melbourne and Rhodes share the services of an officer. So the rest of the incorporated communities in Marshall County contract with us, and then obviously the unincorporated areas were already our responsibility.
Here at this particular facility, not only the sheriff's department, what else is housed here?
The biggest division is the jail, which is a 182-bed facility and staffed with 34 personnel, including the chief. And we have emergency management agency, moved from the police department in recent years out here, and that's been a great partnership. We house with the parent agency for the Mid-Iowa Drug Task Force. And then our other divisions, of course, the civil division, and then in addition to what people normally think of with patrol and field services.
Sure. This is a pretty good facility, no doubt about it. I mean, is it got everything here that you want? I mean, if you could, in a perfect world, is there something you know, on your want list? I mean, there are some really neat. I mean, obviously you've got plenty of parking. You've got the jail out here. It's a good location in the county. Is there anything? You're giving me that look. Yes, there is. That's a rhetorical question, Kyle. Obviously, there are things on your need want list.
Yeah, facility-wise, we've had a long-standing need for a pole building of sorts to store vehicles, or even when, from time to time, when we have our homicides that might involve motor vehicles or large pieces of evidence, places to store.
Sure.
That type of thing. Vehicles that we've forfeited from drug dealers as they move through those procedures, of course, we're required to maintain them until they've been forfeited and awarded to the government, and other equipment that we have that would be better suited with inside storage. So that's certainly one need that the Buildings and Grounds Department and the Sheriff's Office share. Also on a wish list, and I think it may result in a collaborative effort, is potentially working toward a simulated decision-making use of force system. And of course that takes a little bit of space to create that kind of virtual environment for officers and deputies that carry lethal force options to go through scenarios and have scenarios such as shoot, don't shoot, or decide to use the other tools available to them. And of course we practice those type of scenarios on our live fire range, but it's also a great opportunity for environments that have that kind of virtual decision making, where an operator can change the outcomes or reactions from the stimulus, if you will.
I noticed right away as I pulled into the parking lot, you have a firing range here because it startled me a little bit as I walked into the wrong side of the building. I didn't know whether I needed to dive in the bushes, but I heard the multiple shots, so I figured there must be a firing range here.
Department of Natural Resources is using our facility for training today. I don't recall if it's a statewide training, but I know for sure that we have people all the way to the western border with the DNR here training today. That's one great advantage of this facility and its location, the partnerships that we've been able to foster over the years. For many years, we sponsored a week-long advanced crime scene school here that's trained hundreds of students all across the state in forensic crime scene investigation techniques. State Patrol Tactical Team regularly trains here. When we still had an old building on the south side of the campus, they used to practice on that for building entries and rappelling, and canine units will occasionally use the grounds to train on. And recently the Iowa Law Enforcement Academy, 2 weeks ago, here at the end of June anyway, we had 68 students up on our third floor for a 3-day jail officer in-service school. So we enjoy the exposure that Marshall County gets, bringing people in from all over the state, and of course that does foster a collaborative environment with the networking that we have across the state and the other shoots that we have, like the Iowa Police Combat League, and the state, we host the Iowa State Police Reserve shoot, their training and competition shoot in August. And it's a great location and provide excellent opportunities.
Yeah, we're going to take a break, Steve. Hold on. We'll be right back with Sheriff Steve Hoffman. You're watching Discover Marshalltown. Welcome back to Discover Marshalltown. Kyle Martin here hosting, and we're in Sheriff Steve Hoffman's office, and we're continuing on. And the question that I have for you, and it's probably a difficult one to answer, but in law enforcement, if you could give me one thing that's changed so much since you started in law enforcement to now? Is there just something that jumps out in your mind? There's probably a whole bunch of things, but when you first started, is there something that's completely different now?
Right, I mean, many things.
Good or bad, I guess, Steve.
are the same. I mean, you know, criminal activity, the types of things that people do and do to each other are similar. The greatest thing, of course, across many fronts in most of our lives is the change in technology. And in the years that I've been around, which is a long time by some people's standards and a short time by others, but here now 26 years into my career, you know, when I started, we were still using typewriters.
Yeah.
You know, and we were handwriting tickets and handwriting reports.
Right.
You know, if you didn't typewrite reports, and so of course we've transitioned to, you know, records management systems that are electronic. You're able to run driver's license and criminal histories electronically and remotely and print in your cars. The video systems, the radio systems, you know, the technology has grown by leaps and bounds, and to where now, you know, there's facial recognition technologies and license plate readers, and you know, you still have good old-fashioned radar. That principle hasn't changed, you know, for generations.
Right.
But the technology and people carrying computers in their pockets, you know, with their smartphones, and international crime, how that's allowed, you know, people from Nigeria to make people in Marshalltown, Marshall County, you know, victims.
Right.
Is the greatest challenge, and it's also incredibly frustrating to know that you have somebody that's not even, you know, outside of your community, outside of your state, but then outside of your nation's boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
On top of it is frustrating to see people get victimized abroad that way.
Right. In your role as sheriff, there's a lot of ceremonial duties. Or traditionally, there have been ceremonial duties, you know, with Comanches, and I'm sure other sheriffs, county sheriffs. Is there anything? Do you like riding in parades? I guess is what I'm getting at.
I've participated in a lot of parades.
Yeah.
And I like riding in parades better than walking in.
Sure. Well, there you go. Awesome. Yeah, yeah, because there are so many little ceremonial things that I'm sure people don't realize that you get invited to constantly.
There are a lot of things, whether it's reading to children or the parades, and frankly the parades, that's an enjoyable thing too. I love interacting with the people on the sidelines, but the key to enjoying a parade is making sure that you have enough candy, because there have been years in the past where we've walked the gauntlet at the end of Oktoberfest where you ran out of candy that last block or two.
Right.
That's like the walk of shame.
It is the walk of shame, and you don't want that on you. No, you don't. Well, that's happened to us too at the radio station a couple of times.
Give me an opportunity to go into a preschool or a school and spend time with the kids.
Right.
And that's a great time.
Yeah, I've done that as well, reading to school kids. I forget where it was. I think I ran into you the day we were both reading to school kids that morning.
Anson, maybe.
I think it was Anson. Yeah, their Dr. Seuss day.
Right.
Right. One of the major problems in the state of Iowa, it's not unique, is drug trafficking or just drugs in general. I know our county is not unique or immune from that. That has to be just a constant challenge because, you know, not only are people buying it and selling it, now a lot of times they're making it in their homes.
Right. And obviously there's a economic cycle with supply and demand with drugs, and we have to attack those things in a collaborative way. You know, obviously education's an important component with that, as well as enforcement, and more recently with the opioid epidemic that's upon Iowa, the medical community, it appears, is really stepping up and recognizing the importance of controlling prescriptions for the synthetic opioids and painkillers that have a number of people addicted across the state. We're seeing those overdoses and deaths rise in ways that we have not seen, of course, in decades. We still are, methamphetamine is still the drug of choice in Marshall County. but there's a significant pharmaceutical demand, and of course marijuana, and still cocaine and crack cocaine. But with the pharmaceutical, we're also trying to eliminate some of those opportunities for leftover medications with the drug drop boxes that are placed both in the lobby of the Marshalltown Police Department and in the lobby of the Sheriff's Office, to give folks a safe place to dispose of those medications, and one, they're not damaging the environment by flushing them, and giving us an opportunity to properly dispose of them.
Is one of the challenges, and again, this is probably a question that is somewhat rhetorical, but because I think I know the answer, but one of the challenges is it dealing with a second language or a third language barrier in this county? Because I mean, we have a large Hispanic population within the county, and that has to be somewhat of a challenge, either socioeconomic issues, or just a language issue, or just a cultural issue, is not probably something that your officers were necessarily trained in initially.
Probably
anyway.
not on earlier generations, but you know, we've dealt with a full generation now of the methamphetamine epidemic, and I would say with the Hispanic influence, that the efforts at combating that problem is probably largely a cultural issue. And as some Hispanic people have explained to me over the years, in their culture from where they came, that being involved in drug trafficking is accepted from where they come from, and that you practically can't know somebody that's not in your family or acquainted with you that's not touched by or involved in that trade.
Right.
And so that culture has oftentimes been closed and unwilling to cooperate with law enforcement in those respects to report that activity. And how I've countered in those conversations is the recognition that people that have acquired wealth through the illegal means of drug trafficking, regardless of race or ethnicity, they build that wealth and become have legitimate wealth that they build, and sometimes with that legitimate wealth, when they invest that or turn that into businesses, that empowers some people to become spokespeople in the community. And so what I've asked people in that situation, in that community, and from those cultures, the people that are acquiring wealth through in illegal ways, is that who in the future you would want to see be the representatives of your community, by virtue of having influence in their community and socially and economically.
Obviously, there are many challenges. We talked about the budget, we talked about language, we talked about drugs. In this country, or you can't speak for the whole country, but in our county, is there a problem at all with weapons? We keep hearing, people are buying, I don't mean necessarily in our county, but the social media and television and CNN and all the cable networks, they're constantly talking about weapons of some kind, being transported or bought illegally or purchased illegally. Is that a problem that we've had at all?
No, probably our greatest problem, and again, that's oftentimes or typically fueled by the drug trade, would be the theft of weapons from the homes of legitimate, lawful firearms owners.
Right.
And then having those weapons either sold to the drug market or sold in exchange for drugs.
Okay. Let's get some happier talk. Steve's had this, oh no, here we go again. Yeah, let's talk about some happier things of your job. Are there things when you come in every day, your typical day is like what? I mean, when you come in and, you get your cup of coffee and you start going through your emails or whatever, I mean, what's your day like?
You know, obviously, as it evolved over time from patrol to now, that it is more typically administrative, checking on the daily needs of the agency, making sure that our staffing was covered and that our fleet management needs have been covered, and responding to the phone calls that come in and the 100 to 300 email messages that come in a day. And
Yeah.
So I can spend a good part of my day just trying to scan and keep up even
Yeah.
with the email, let alone checking what's come in for our call activity and see if there's been anything that needs special attention. But that's the great thing about having great people. You know, I have excellent division chiefs in Joel Phillips and Pat White, and sergeants and deputies, and just a very competent and supportive staff that take a lot of that worry away from me. Now, I enjoy the opportunity when I'm traveling from home to the office or to the courthouse. I still take advantage of patrol. If I see something that needs attention, I'll make those traffic stops and still occasionally arrest people, and that does get some eyebrows raised.
I bet it does.
When the sheriff brings somebody into the back door of the jail, or you see young patrol officers seeing the sheriff arresting somebody, you know, you kind of get a little bit of rib.
Yeah.
poking and-
It's like, I'm still doing it too, buddy. I'm still bringing my A game. So we're about out of time. I'm getting the "we're just about out of time" sign. So Steve, it's always a pleasure to talk to you, either socially or in a broadcast medium. It's fun to have you here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Greatly appreciate it. That's going to wrap up another edition of Discover Marshalltown. Tune in again next time.